Ladies and gentlemen, there are places that are coveted not for their beauty, nor for their luxury, nor for the weight of their gold. These places are sacred because they carry the whisper of presence, the warmth of the invisible, and the trembling hush of eternity. These are the places we find in the quiet hours of the morning, when the world has not yet made its demands, when the heart is still open, and when the soul stretches out towards something higher. It is here in these places between breath and silence that we are not simply invited to speak to God, but to talk with God. This is not a monologue. This is not a performance. This is not the recitation of ancient words with mouths that no longer burn with belief. This is conversation. This is communion. This is relationship. For too long we have stood behind the veil of ritual and routine, pressing our voices up against a heaven we feared would not answer. But the time has come to step closer, to open not just our mouths but our ears, not just our petitions but our patience, not just our hopes but our honesty. There is something miraculous about the morning, not because the sun rises, though it does with magnificent consistency, but because it is in the morning that the human soul is most porous. The day has not yet hardened us. We have not yet been wounded by words or wearied by expectations. Our dreams are still soft around the edges, and in that gentle space something stirs. It is a whisper we cannot name, a pull we cannot trace. It is the divine waiting not to be spoken to, but to be spoken with. Let us not imagine that this conversation begins with eloquence. God does not wait for our grammar. The sacred does not require poetry. The conversation with God is not polished. It is raw. It begins in stutters, in sighs, in sentences that trail off into silence. And yet in that trembling beginning, something eternal opens, something vast listens, something holy leans in. Talking with God means we dare to believe that our voice matters in the presence of the infinite. It means we trust that our story is not too small, not too messy, not too incomplete to be heard. It means we stop trying to impress and start trying to connect. So often when we pray, we bring a list, a checklist of needs, a script of sorrows, a catalog of complaints. And yes, God welcomes them. But there is more. There is so much more. What if the morning prayer was not just a request, but a relationship? What if it was not the sound of us knocking on heaven's door, but the sound of heaven already inside our living room, sipping tea, waiting for us to notice? Talking with God begins with presence. It begins with sitting down, breathing in, and acknowledging that you are not alone, that the room, though silent, is full, that the air around you holds the breath of the divine, and that you are not here to perform, you are here to participate, yes, but also listen. Listen not only for the booming voice of the miraculous, but for the stillness between your thoughts. Listen to the nudges, the pulls, the inexplicable urge to do good, to forgive, to weep, to rise. That is God too. That is the conversation. That is the dialogue deeper than words. And what will you say when you talk with God? Not just the rehearsed lines, not just the memorized creeds. Say what hurts. Say what heals. Say what confuses you, what frightens you, what ignites you. Talk about your dreams, your wounds, your laughter. Talk about your anger. Talk about your doubts. Talk as you would to someone who knows you beyond your own understanding, because that is who waits in the quiet. You may think your words are too broken, but God hears in fragments. God understands in sighs. You may think your story is too chaotic, but God speaks the language of chaos and brings light out of it. You may think you have nothing to say, but talking with God is not always about the saying. It is about the being. It is about showing up, about honoring the relation. This is what morning prayer can be. A table where you pull up a chair, where the unseen becomes familiar, where the holy becomes a companion, where you are not simply shouting into the sky but sitting at the feet of wisdom, of love, of mercy, of... There is power in knowing that you are not speaking into the void. There is comfort in knowing that the conversation is mutual. There is beauty in discovering that the divine has something to say to you too. So rise in the morning, not just to plead but to participate, not just to request, but to respond, not just to vent, but to value. Talk with God as one talks with a friend, as one who is heard, as one who is cherished, as one who belongs. When we shift from talking to God to talking with God, something within us shifts too. We stop seeing prayer as duty and start experiencing it as delight. We stop timing our prayers and start treasuring them. We stop wondering if we are being heard and start listening to the way we already are. Let us think for a moment about the conversations that have changed our lives. Were they grand speeches? No, most often they were simple exchanges, filled with honesty, depth, and presence. They were not about performance, they were about connection. The same is true in the sacred space of morning dialogue. What changes us is not how eloquently we speak, but how deeply we engage. The world is loud. It tells us to run, to hustle, to perform. But the sacred invites us to pause. In that pause, the real conversation begins. In that pause, the soul finds its voice. In that pause, we hear something ancient, something eternal, something familiar. Some will say, but I have no time. And yet we find time for everything else. For emails, for news, for endless scrolling. What if we carved out just a slice of our dawn, not to add something more to our schedule, but to ground everything else in something real? Morning prayer is not another task. It is a returning, a remembering, a reconnecting. It is where the scattered pieces of our mind are gathered into one. It is where the fragments of our heart are tenderly held. It is where the illusions of separation fall away, and we remember we are never truly alone. Let the bird song be your cue. Let the rising sun be your reminder. Let the stillness of the world before the noise of the day be your sacred invitation. You do not have to wait for the perfect words. You do not have to wait until you feel worthy. You do not have to wait at all. The conversation has already begun. The invitation has already been extended. And it will look different every morning. Some days it will be tears. Some days it will be silence. Some days it will be joy. Some days it will be questions without answers. But every day it will be real. Every day it will be holy. In the space of morning prayer, you are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to be in process. You are allowed to not have it all figured out. This is not about perfection. This is about presence. Talk with God when you are tired, when you are unsure, when you are hopeful, when you are laughing, when you are broken, when you are healing. Talk with God, not just to find answers, but to find alignment, not just to be rescued, but to be reminded, not just to be filled, but to be found. For God is not just the destination of your words, but the companion in your becoming. Not just the answer, but the question that calls you deeper. Not just the rescuer, but the relationship that renews you. Do not wait for the world to fall apart to begin the conversation. Do not wait until you are desperate. Do not wait until you are polished. Begin where you are. Begin now. Begin in the morning, before the demands of the world ask you to forget. And if all you can say is, I'm here, that is enough, because God says back.